Hello, this is C.H.E.K. Welcome back to my video blog. Today I'd like to talk to you about something that I've spoken about countless times in conferences all over the world, but it's clear to me that it's not information that's making it to the mainstream when it really should be making it to the mainstream. So today I'd like to talk about belly button, ear, and nose ring dangers. I was inspired to do this blog today not only because I've seen countless cases of the kinds of things I'm going to talk about and describe to you today due to electromagnetic frequencies getting involved with metal in people's body, whether it be belly button rings, nose rings, earrings, and it can be other things such as metal in people's bodies from surgical procedures, dental hardware. But those things are usually things that we don't have the option to easily remove. If you have metal in your body or you have already got dental hardware in your mouth, then you can read this book that I'm going to cite here in 10 seconds and learn the things you can do to minimize the stress on your body because you have metal in your body. But when it comes to having the option to not put metal in your body with regard to belly button rings, nose rings, and ear rings, there's a few things I would like to share that I think are very, very important. And when I point some of these ways of observing the negative effects of these things out, and I'll even suggest ways you can test for this, I think many of you are going to be quite shocked at what you find when you know what you're looking for. Now, recently, I was sent this book, The Non-Tinfoil Guide to EMFs, How to Fix Our Stupid Use of Technology, which I think is a very, very truthful statement. One of my quotes I recently wrote down is that the problem with smart people is they can be dangerously stupid. And the smart people I'm referring to here are the many so-called scientists that come up with a lot of these things that are now common technologies, be they microwaves or cell phones and many other technologies that they do not tell you about the dangers on your body, don't tell you how to protect yourself, and don't even offer protective technologies to go with your technology, or use their skill to produce things like iPhones to also produce protection circuits in them and devices which now we know can be done to protect you. So this book actually is a very readable, very well done, beautifully researched book by Nicholas Pineault. So The Non-Tinfoil Guide to EMFs, How to Fix Our Stupid Use of Technology by Nicholas Pineault. Penny will put that on the screen for you. When he sent this to me, I went through this book, and one of the first things I noticed is the first book I've seen out there that mentions the dangers of metal in your body, which could be things like nose rings and belly button rings and things like that, and how they do pick up electromagnetic pollution or frequencies that can be disruptive to your body. I began noticing this stuff years ago, because one, I have an understanding of how the body works, what fascia is, and how fascia works. So it wasn't easy for me to understand why I was seeing some of the kinds of things I'm going to share with you now. Now, the first thing I want to point out is that fascia, connective tissue in the human body, though it is composed largely of water, fascia is considered what's called an electret substance. An electret is a substance that produces an electromagnetic energy or charge when it's deformed. So when you flex your muscles or when you stretch your body, you are deforming fascia, which produces energy that your body can use. Most of you will have noticed that after you stretch, that you have more energy. It's because you're energizing the system, and the fascia can get bound down, and that disrupts its capacity to function as an energy generator. So when you restore normal length tension relationships to fascia, it not only enhances energy flow through your body, but can balance energy flow through your body. And it's important to remember that fascia is largely water. 95+% water, and water has been shown by research to have an almost infinite capacity to respond to electromagnetic frequencies, and water is also a conductor of electromagnetic energy. Water will conduct electricity, for example. So when we have a body that's largely cased in fascia, I mean, your whole body is a web of fascia, and inside the fascia is water, it means that we're highly sensitive to electromagnetic pollution. If you look at the book, The Body Electric by Robert O. Becker, he shows you a chart that shows how much we've increased the background electromagnetic pollution in our environment, I believe, since the year 1900, and it's just thousands of times more that in 100 years that we're being exposed to 24/7. And even in places where you think there wouldn't be any, we have lots of it due to military technologies, satellites, and all sorts of other stuff, cell phone towers on top of mountains, and countless is the number of patients that I've worked with that were having serious and chronic digestive troubles, eliminative troubles, energy troubles, adrenal burnout, and the list goes on. And when I work with them to find someone to evaluate their home and measure the electromagnetic pollution and put protective devices in place and do the kinds of things that Nicholas Pineault shows to do in this book, that their health problems cleared up typically quite quickly. So the first point then is fascia is highly sensitive to electromagnetic frequencies at almost any range, from low frequency to high frequency. When you go sit in an infrared sauna, infrared waves means infrared below red. Those are fairly long, slow waves. If you go red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, then ultraviolet, then the number of sine waves happening per second goes up, and the faster the sine wave, or the greater the number you get per second, the more energy there is. So when you're talking about things like a microwave oven or a cell phone or many of the other kinds of technologies that we have that are common in homes and work environments all over the place, then we are being bombarded with energies that can have a very highly stimulating effect on our body, our hormonal system, and our nervous system, and it can lead to a wide variety of problems, including chronic fatigue, chronic inflammation in the body, mental, emotional confusion, many things, and things that are often very strange and unusual symptoms that many doctors and therapists aren't familiar with and often misdiagnose. So aside from that, I want to point out that the body operates on what's called the MENS system. MENS stands for minimal electrical neuromuscular stimulation. Our cells operate on extremely low voltage charges. Our cells also use photons to communicate. If you look into the research of Fritz Albert Popp, he shows that our cells are using photon emissions to communicate at all times, and these important low voltage communication systems and photon systems can be disrupted by things like electromagnetic pollution. There's a law called the Arndt-Schultz law. You can find it usually in older medical dictionaries, but it's still considered by physiologists to be true. The Arndt-Schultz law says weak stimuli activate physiological processes, moderate stimuli favor them, and strong stimuli inhibit them. Now, considering that our body operates on very, very low voltage, and these technologies can produce very significant amounts of energy outside the frequency range of our body's normal operating spectrum, you can see how when we're meant to operate on weak stimuli, which favors physiological processes, when we get too much bombardment from electromagnetic pollution, it can actually disrupt physiological systems. Remember, strong stimuli inhibit our physiological systems. So there's many things to be considered. Now, I don't have this research paper on hand. If I had it, I'd give you the exact citing, but the researcher's name was Ross Addy. And I found this paper probably 10, 12 years ago when research started coming out showing that cell phones were causing brain cancer. And in that research article, he showed that the signal strength that a cell phone uses to communicate between cell phones or the cell phone tower is about 1 million times stronger than the amount or the intensity of the signals that the brain cells use to communicate with each other. Certainly you've noticed that if you're in a building, oftentimes in order to get a signal, you've got to walk over to a door or a window. Here's the issue though, if you're standing with your cell phone on your head and the door or the window is on the opposite side, the frequency is going right through your brain to the antenna of the cell phone, and there's now plenty of research coming out showing that that's a problem, and there is a lot of excellent information on here showing that even non-ionizing radiation and low-level inputs that previously scientists did not think could harm the human body are turning out to do all sorts of nasty things, including causing cancer in research animals. So now what I'm talking about here is overstimulation. So now I want to get into some of the brass tacks. Over the years, traveling around the world, doing demonstrations on stage, giving lectures on how the human core functions, it was very common for me to ask, are there any women out there that are having problems with their low back or their pelvic girdle or any kind of pelvic girdle pain syndromes or menstrual problems coupled with those things? And of course, the audience was full. Oftentimes I'd get 50, 60 women raising their hand at once. Then I would say, now how many of you are wearing a belly button ring? And oftentimes it was 80% of those women that had raised their hands. I would bring them up on stage and do the core function tests that you can learn right in my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, right here. And it shows you very simple, practical tests for determining if your core is functioning correctly. I won't go through it now because it'll take too long and I would need a model to demonstrate. You can read the book and it shows you right what to do. I would run core function tests right on stage on these women, and they could clearly feel that their core was not working properly. I would do muscle tests on them in front of the audience. Then I would remove their belly button ring, and 99 times out of 100, there was either a complete correction and their core started to work properly, or a significant improvement in core function by simply removing the belly button ring. Now, when you're in a conference hall, there's usually all sorts of electronics in there. There's radios being used by support staff. You're in major cities, so every fire truck, every policeman, every emergency system, two-way radio system, truck drivers, you name it, all of these things are coming through the body and bombarding the body with these frequencies. Now, this represents a nose ring right here. Just a very basic thing to understand how an antenna works. If you have a piece of metal, any piece of metal will pick up the sine waves or the frequency, the energy waves of any kind of signal, such as a cell phone signal, if the sine wave will fit inside the link. So this would be a nose ring pin, and I'm just showing you that this would pick up a frequency of that size. Now, this is just a simple example, but when you're dealing with things like microwaves, you're dealing with very, very high speed frequencies. Some of these frequencies can go up to 1 billion cycles a second. So in order, if that pin was 1 centimeter long, imagine if you had 1 billion cycles a second, you could get so damn many of them, and then it would turn that thing into a, shall we say, it would light it up, and they do. So what I'm showing you here is that when people have belly button rings in, it's picking up a huge number of frequencies, and that's overstimulating the solar plexus, and it's disrupting hormonal function, and it's winding up the fascial system and disrupting how energy moves through our fascia. Because fascia is an electret, when you overstimulate it, it starts to contract. Some of you have been to an acupuncturist before, had the acupuncturist put the needle in. Often they'll give it a little spin, and sometimes when they go to take the needle out, they can't pull it out. Because the fascia is binding the needle so hard, so they may have to do some stimulation or wait a while or do something with putting another needle in to redirect the flow or balance the flow of energy, or the needle will not come out. And I've actually seen when a needle comes out, the fascia can bind so hard it'll pull the fascia right through the skin. So these are very, very real things to be concerned about, and they're happening all the time. Now, when it comes to nose rings, I've seen many, many cases of this. I've rehabbed lots of people with chronic headaches, eye pain, ear dysfunctions, hearing dysfunctions, jaw pain, neck pain, atlas subluxation, so their heads are sitting crooked on their body, and track this many times to nose rings. If you look at a human face, if you have what would look like a gun sight, your eyes should be sitting on the horizontal line, and the midline should go right through between your eyes, right down your nose, right between your incisor teeth, so you would have a perfect gun sight. If this person, for example, has a nose ring on the left side, and you got a pin in there like that, that will suck energy into one side of the face, which will charge the fascia up on one side. And as I said earlier, when you put energy into fascia like that, it starts to contract. It acts like an electromagnet. The more strength you have in a magnet, the tighter it'll pull the iron filings together and the more it can lift. So what we get is we start seeing the fascia on one side of the face get tighter. And if you look at a person who's been wearing a nose ring for any length of time, what you'll find is the orbit. The orbit is the socket where your eye fits in. The fascia will get so tight that the orbit on that side will start to look slightly smaller. So it actually looks a little bit like that eye is closed down a little, pulled down. So you'll notice that if they have a belly button ring on one side, the eye on the opposite side actually looks a little bit bigger than the eye on the side with the nose ring. And if you look at the midline, you'll actually often see the jaw is getting pulled that way. That creates a facial structure which is technically called banana face in the dental literature. So you see the jaw being pulled that way, you see the eye being closed down, and that causes compression here in the temporomandibular joint, can cause teeth not to fit together properly, and that tension overflows into the atlas axis complex and leads to the head sitting crooked on the body, which can cause all sorts of changes in your posture and motor functions all throughout your body, and too many other things for me to mention in a short little blog like this. Although all CHEK level 3 and 4 practitioners are taught how to do a comprehensive assessment on the entire head, neck, jaw complex, key cranial nerve functions to identify these kinds of problems, and they know how to go about correcting them for you. So that said, you can look at a person's face and see the longer they've had that nose ring in on one side, usually the more obvious this becomes. I had a case of a woman who I worked with personally for quite some time. When I met her, she had quite a significant case of banana face. I showed it to her in the mirror and it shocked her because she'd never noticed, because it's insidious. It comes on over time. And she was having headaches and problems that correlate to that at the time. But the good news is usually within as little as 2 to 3 weeks, if you take out the nose ring and there's not any other stimulus, the face will slowly balance itself, although often they need help from a cranial therapist or a craniosacral therapist, a Rolfer or a Heller worker, or someone that knows how to work with the bone structure and the fascia to restore balance. But it often does slowly correct all by itself, and a lot of the things that people have been spending a lot of money on doctors and therapists for start going away spontaneously because the body wants to balance itself. Now, if you have earrings on, if you have them on both sides, then you will just basically wind your whole head up. And so what will happen is that causes the fascia of your head to wind down, and it can lead to so much compression that the cranial sutures cannot move properly, and they have to move for what's called the craniosacral pump system. Now, there are many people, even today in the medical system, that still say that the cranial sutures don't move, but that's so far antiquated and outdated, it's ridiculous, and any skilled therapist who knows how to assess craniosacral rhythm can feel the movement of those sutures, and they move in a specific rhythm. And if that rhythm gets disrupted, it can cause problems all through the body of many, many different types. So the good news is that the tension is evenly balanced, so it causes compression through the whole head and jaw complex, but it's symmetrical tension, which is less invasive to the body than if you were wearing one earring or a unilaterally positioned nose ring. And oftentimes I have women having head, neck, and jaw problems of various types, and one of the first things I have to do is get them to take any kind of metal earrings off and not wear them. I've actually had cases of patients with heart problems that had a habit of wearing metal necklaces, like gold chains and things like that, and I told them, you got to take off those metal necklaces and do not wear those things if you have heart problems. And in every single case, they all noticed a significant improvement in things like tachycardia, arrhythmia, when they got rid of their metal necklaces, because it's acting like a huge antenna that sucks electromagnetic frequencies in, and most necklaces hang right in front of the heart, and the heart has a very, very sensitive nervous system and produces a very strong electromagnetic field that can easily be disrupted by these kinds of inputs. Cell phones I talked about, wireless systems. If you have a wireless system in your house, it's absolutely imperative that you shut it off at night. It can seriously disrupt your sleep. I know this from firsthand experience. Without a long story, about 10 years ago or so, I had a very serious neck injury, tore ligaments in my spine, blew 2 discs out, pinched my spinal cord quite badly, lost 26 pounds of muscle in 4 weeks, and spent about 8 years rehabilitating myself. And even to this day, I have to be real careful with heavy weightlifting overhead. My wife, who's standing right behind the camera right now, can tell you I used to wear through a new sheet every few months from how many times I would roll over all night. I would have numbness in my arm, pain in my neck. And it dawned on me at one point that maybe the wireless system in the house was aggravating my body, and we started shutting the wireless system off. And the first night that we shut that wireless system off was the first night in years that I slept through the night and didn't roll over constantly at night. And now I have a fraction of the problem and hardly any neurological symptoms whatsoever. So if you have a wireless system on, or you're in a building with a wireless system, if you're wearing nose rings, belly button rings, or earrings, it will be jacking you up, and you should never wear that stuff to bed because it'll really make the whole thing worse. And you want to make sure you shut wireless systems off. It's very important to have protective devices for your phones. My cell phone has one on, my computer has one on. Most of them are junk. I use the Aries technology systems for cell phones, tablets, computers, and they make a card that will produce a protective radius of about 6 feet, which I use on airplanes and when I'm in coffee shops traveling around the world. It's a very advanced Russian technology. It's not cheap, but it actually works. Most of the other devices I've tested were junk. Now you can simply muscle test someone. Just do a standard muscle test. Ask them to resist you, push down on their arm, give them a little support on the opposite side, just see how strong they are, and then take a cell phone that's live, have them hold it in their hand, and you'll notice immediately that they'll go weak no matter how hard they try. It's easy to overpower them. And so one way you can tell if your protective device works is that when you have it attached to your phone, or depending on what type it is, it's near your body, the phone being on should not cause weakness on the muscle test. The C.H.E.K does protect you. I've tested it. You can try it for yourself. I wouldn't recommend it if I didn't think it was the real deal. I have tested many that didn't do anything but just had cool write-ups. So what can you do? Well, one, if you're going to stick stuff in your body for aesthetic purposes, the safe materials that I know of are ceramic, bone, stone, blown glass, or any other natural material. There's a few others. If I did an exhaustive search, I could probably come up with some others. Ivory is one, but I don't want to promote using ivory. Tooth is one, so you see things like shark tooth or tiger tooth earrings and all sorts of stuff like that. Now, for some of you, particularly the women, I know you're very attached to the aesthetic appeal of these things. So if you really need to wear that for your beauty purposes, what I tell my clients and students to do is only wear it for the short period of time. If you're going to go out to dinner or go out dancing, put on your nose ring, your earrings, or your belly button ring, but take it off as soon as you get home from your event, or it can cause way more problem than the beauty bonus you're going to get out of it. So those are the key points that I wanted to share with you. Again, my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, shows you specifically how to test your core. I recommend you do the test with and without your belly button ring if you're having any kind of low back, pelvic girdle, digestive or eliminative problems. Your core is probably going to test weak, which means that your structure cannot stabilize itself. And then take the belly button ring out and you'll probably notice you have significantly improved performance. Then the non-tinfoil guide to EMFs, How to Fix Our Stupid Use of Technology by Nicholas Pineault. Highly recommend it. He's producing an online course to learn how the electromagnetic pollution affects our bodies and how to deal with it intelligently. In my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, there's a chapter on sleep where I give you several suggestions for unplugging things and making your sleep environment much safer, which I highly recommend. And another technology that's extremely important is a grounding mat. If you just search Amazon or look on the blog, Penny will give you a link. Having a grounding mat, which is another thing that's very helpful and helped me get rid of a lot of my neck pain, will help bleed off electromagnetic pollution. And you need devices like an C.H.E.K if you're in a place like an apartment building where you can have 5 or 6 wireless systems running right through your place, or 20 or 30 in some of these places that you can't control, or if you're going to work and there's a lot of it around, or you're moving through things like airports, having that C.H.E.K card on you can make a world of difference in how you feel, your energy levels, your mental clarity, and your ability to sleep at night. And I carry it with me because when I travel, I'm often in hotels where I cannot control the environment. So that's just a little bit of the kind of information I share with you in the C.H.E.K Exercise Coach and C.H.E.K Practitioner and C.H.E.K Holistic Lifestyle Coaching programs. Many of you have watched a lot of my blogs, but believe me, I'm only giving you the little snippets I can share. When you come for the actual training, I take you much deeper and show you a much more comprehensive methodology for assessing people, designing corrective programs, diet and lifestyle programs, knowing where to look for a lot of these hidden dangers and what to do about it. So thanks for joining me today. Hope you enjoyed my video blog. Get the metal out, get some ceramic or something healthy if you want to beautify yourself, or follow the suggestions for using it intermittently only for special events. Get into the protective devices, read Nick Pineault's book, and let's eat, move, and be healthy together. Thanks for joining me. I'm Paul C.H.E.K.